So now we've had a look at the question, let's have a look at this example student response. It's a real response. So we've got a nice introductory paragraph here. Straight away addressing the question there. Look, to what extent do you agree? I totally agree with the reader's feedback. So there's no sitting on the fence there. So this learner agrees with the feedback, and we should find evidence below that backs up this student's opinion. A little bit of context. It's clear from the start of the extract that Alice, the main character, is curious and attentive and tenacious. She's got great willing to discover something. So it's a nice introduction, which is a good idea with paper 1 question 4. So then we move on to the body of the student's answer. Now the first bullet point, if you remember, was the first bullet point was consider the reasons why Alice decides to continue digging. So your opinion, and it says here, this is the student's opinion. Alice prefers to stay separate from her friends. In just that one paragraph there, had a look at bullet point 1. So the student here has given their opinion as to why Alice has decided to continue digging. And there's some quotes in there, so that also gives 1 tick against bullet point 3 about giving references from the text. So then we move on to paragraph 2. From lines 24 to 28, Moss, who is the author of the piece, focuses the attention on what Alice is digging. Now, focuses the attention, you may remember, is a structural technique. So what the student here has done quite cleverly is talk about some of the methods the writer has used, evaluate how the writer creates a sense of mystery. So focuses the attention on what Alice is digging and the purpose of her tenacity, linking it back to the earlier point. Her luck's about to change. Another nice quote. The writer builds a certain expectation in the reader. Again, another structural technique. It's almost like rising tension or building up towards a climax. Describing what Alice noticed earlier, and a quote here explaining that point. So almost actually every point the learner has made, they've backed up with a quote, which is excellent. Describing what Alice noticed earlier, something glinting beneath a large boulder, almost as if it had been placed there by a giant hand. And the learner goes on to say, this last sentence is a metaphor of something divine. Now, so divine means godlike, which is a lovely piece of perceptive analysis of what they've just said here in their answer. Metaphor, obviously a language technique, which is, again, looking at the techniques the writer has used, that has perhaps forced something to appear there in order to help Alice. So that goes back to the other focus point of the question about how has the writer created a sense of mystery, because that sounds really mysterious. So maybe the power of God has done it, or it could be like a metaphorical giant, something like from a fairy tale, but really decent analysis here. The learner goes on. That explains the reason why she wanted to continue digging, referencing the other focus point of the question. By herself, she knows that she should have fetched someone. But the learner goes on, another quote, it's her last full day on site and she wants to prove herself. So we're just going to look at the last little section of this learner's response here. So that second paragraph there, lots of embedded quotes addressing all the bullet points to the question and mentioning the methods that the writer has used. So really addressing the question there. The last point here, Alice is also strongly motivated, and a quote there, Alice will look back to this moment, and the last paragraphs of the text the learner's referring to here brings back the attention, so more structural technique here mentioned, to the scorching sun and the hot weather to emphasize the incredible willing despite the adversities. And another quote, Alice carries on working. So the feedback here from this learner's teacher, what went well, perceptive points and analysis backed up by relevant quotations. Even better if one, you could comment on the semantic field of time in the penultimate paragraph. So there was another technique there that the writer had used, lots of mention of time. which would be a good point. But overall, look, a great response, an 18 out of 20. So a really decent answer here. The last thing I need to mention about this question is, and this is one thing that so many of you have done, marking earlier in the year mock papers for paper 1, you don't mention the methods the writer has used. And if you don't mention those methods, you can't score more than 5 marks on this question. So it's so important to talk about how well the writer has used methods to create whatever the focus point of this question is, in this case, a sense of mystery. So good luck with paper 1, question 4. And if you need any other help, you know where to find us.